right, welcome to another episode of Catholic Mindset. Today we have Carmen Santamaria. So you guys mentioned the book talks about support. How can individuals like myself support friends or people who are struggling, right? That's the kind of support we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So what are we looking at supporting?
So I think that sometimes those of us, we all at this point in time know somebody who's going through or has gone through infertility. It's so prevalent at this point. The statistics tell us it's 1 in 6 couples in the United States. But sometimes there's this tendency either to avoid it. Oh, it's the elephant in the room. I don't want to talk about it with them. Or it's the other extreme of, oh, let me give you all the advice in the world. Oh, just do this and you'll get pregnant. And none of that is helpful to couples who are experiencing infertility.
Drink a tea.
Yes, absolutely. All the time.
My grandmother said, you take a shower with roses, all sorts of stuff. You'll see.
Yes, 100% to all of that. Unfortunately,
my grandmother has some crazy stories and how they claim to fix things. But yeah, communication is key, and support. Being able to talk about it is so important.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's giving people the space. Like, you also don't want to force anybody to talk about it if they're not comfortable talking about it. So just being there, say, hey, I'm praying for you. Is there anything I can help you with? Is there anything you want to talk about? Is there anything, can we go to mass together? Can we go to adoration? Let's go have coffee. Something to just be supportive for the couple while they're going through this. I think it goes a long way to know that they're not alone. And you can point them to resources, and that's helpful too. But at the same time, you need to kind of respect people's space and people's journey through this, and give them the opportunity to talk if they wish.
Right, but there are online resources. There's also at some parishes, like our parish has a ministry for infertile couples, so it just kind of depends on, what's out there, but giving them those good Catholic sound, morally acceptable options, that's really the best, the best support, because I think we have to remember that we are consumers of, our medical, practices or whatever. When we go to the doctor, it can be intimidating if you're, neither of us are in the medical field, and so they tell you something and you just believe whatever they tell you, right? So if you're really in the throes of infertility, you kind of just don't know, and they're like telling you, oh, you should do this.
In vitro is your only option.
Right. So you need somebody who can really point you into, like, okay, no, you have other options. There are other things you can do, and that you need that other voice out there to help you.
Yeah, and there's online retreats now. There's online support groups. There's a lot of options out there now, which is, praise God. We need to be able to serve people who are experiencing this.
Can you give some samples of some names of like online resources? You don't have to be like www at, but I can share some of this stuff in the show notes.
In the show notes. Yeah, I can't.
Called Streams in the Desert. That one that
the OSB.
Well, can we get back to you on that? Like,
yeah.
What happened is that we have resources in the book, but that was 10 years ago, and so now there's all these other things. I know Redbird Ministries is one that deals with miscarriage and infant loss. So we can send that to you.
Okay. So what we'll do is we'll once the show is out, guys and ladies, you guys can check the show notes for any resources in relations to this conversation.
Sounds good.
Cool. So can you give me more of a little bit of example of how to support someone who's struggling with infertility?
I think just being there and listening, and saying, I'm here for you, that, I'm here to listen to you if you want to talk. And they may want to, and they may not want to, you can take them out for coffee or ice cream or anything like that. Maybe even a little note. There's, St. Gerard Magella, St. Anne, there's different patron saints that could be, interceding for them. And you can say, hey, I'm asking for the intercession of, this patron saint, and, a little prayer card, something like that. I think just so that they know that you're there and that you acknowledge and that you understand that this is a loss, that there's a grief process involved in, okay, we felt God calling us to have a baby, but it's not happening right now. Offer to go to mass with them, go to the Blessed Sacrament. I think there's many ways to be able to support them and be there for them, and allow them the space to be able to talk if they so wish. I think it's hard also because at a time, all their friends are having babies, all your friends are having babies and you're the only one who feels like you don't. And so then there's the baptisms and there's the baby showers, and that's hard. And that's, I think that we also have to give grace and understand that there might be a day where a person just really feels like they can't make it to X baby shower. And that's hard, but also the flip side of that, right, is for those of us who are experiencing that, to challenge ourselves to be there and celebrate life, right? Because if we really, really want, this is a life that we desire, to be there, to be able to celebrate life is a way to also challenge ourselves to kind of step outside of ourselves and be able to be there for someone else. So I think that it is definitely a process. It's definitely a grieving, and being there to support somebody just by allowing them the space to talk goes a very long way.
That's so important. You know, people just keep things to themselves sometimes, and without communicating, then you don't know. You can't, if you don't communicate your struggles, then you can't find companionship in it. Like, you know what, Carmen, I also struggle with this, but I did this and this, and this is how I leaned on my faith, to support me. And then I found other solutions, and having resources. If you keep it to yourself, it's no good.
Yep.
Right. But I think we just really have to be respectful of everybody, and that it's different, like Angelique said, it's a process, it's a grieving process. And, for many couples, because of the cyclical nature of this, right? Because it revolves around like the woman's cycle. I mean, it's like every month you're kind of just in this grieving process, right? And you're going through it, and the hope, and so it's hard, but just knowing and also just respecting that friend that you have, you can say, okay, I'm here for you, and I'll listen. But sometimes people don't want to talk, so you really just have to make yourself available, but also be very, extending grace, like she said. If somebody doesn't want to do something at a certain point, understanding that.
Yeah. So in our pre-podcast conversation, both of you ladies mentioned that you guys had struggled at some point in different aspects of infertility. Do you guys want to tell us a little bit of your story? And I understand it led to adoption as well. So I think that's awesome at the same time, being able to provide a family for a child in need. But tell us a little about your stories.
Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
So I'll go first. So yes, when my husband and I were first trying to conceive, we were, it wasn't happening in the timing that we were expecting. And because we did natural family planning, we saw that, that my charts were okay, and we were puzzled by it. So we did testing, and, it came back as unexplained infertility. So we really felt very strongly that God was using that as an opportunity for us to adopt. We were feeling called to adoption. And so we had the blessing of being able to adopt our oldest son from Vietnam. And he's 15 now. So it's been quite a blessing. And he came home to us at 8 months old. So we definitely are, proponents for adoption. We talked about all the medical interventions of infertility, and we're blessed as Catholics to have all these options. But we also want to encourage people to take a look at the option of adoption, that perhaps God is calling couples to adopt because of this experience.
And how many kids do you have now?
We have 6 children.
6 of your own?
All of them are our own. Biological and adopted.
Biological in total, like that's 6, which is great. So your struggle was mainly at the beginning, and then you adopted, and then you were able to have your own kids. That's awesome. That's awesome. Carmen?
So mine's a little bit different. So we also used NFP in our marriage. And when we were ready to, I had gone back to graduate school, and when we were ready to have a child, we got pregnant right away. We have our daughter who's also 15, almost 16. And then we're able to get pregnant with our son after her. So, we didn't think there was anything wrong. But my husband and I had, from the onset, from before we got married, talked about adoption being part of our family. And we had just thought we would do it a little bit later. But after we weren't able to have any more biological children, even after we had those 2, we had testing, we decided, okay, well, maybe God is calling us to adopt sooner rather than later. And so we have twins that are adopted. So we have 4 children, 2 biological, 2 adopted.
And from where did you adopt your kids, if I may ask? Since we know
our children are domestic adoption. So they
domestic,
yeah. So we
South Florida.
Florida, no, not South Florida, middle
Oh,
Florida.
domestic.
But domestic, yeah. So we adopted them as babies. Like Victoria came home when she was 4 days old, and then Danny had to stay in the NICU for a little bit because they're twins. So they were born a little bit early, and so he had to stay for a little bit. But they are super healthy and awesome, and yeah. So,
Yeah.
and our daughter had prayed for twins, so that was also our oldest, right? So she had wanted boy-girl twins, and that's what God provided. So there you go.
That's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about the experience of adopting? I know it's not for everyone, but if you're called for, what is that outcome?
I mean, I think, well, we know both of our families, our children are all the same. Like, we don't treat our children any differently just because maybe they look a little differently than us. These are all my children, and that's that, and I think it's a different way of growing your family, and I guess it has its challenges, but I mean,
Like in anything.
like anything, right?
Anything
I mean,
has challenges.
people also say the process is super difficult. For us, it wasn't that difficult. I mean, yes, you do have to do certain things, paperwork, and you do certain classes maybe, but things that you understand from a point of view of somebody's going to give you a child, right? So they want to make sure that your home is safe. They want to make sure that you're sane, and you're like right. Normal things that you can understand, and you kind of just the same way you would apply for a job and go through certain things. You have to do that, and you have to be comfortable with people, social workers asking you questions and coming to your home, but that's also it's a small little inconvenience if
compared to the blessing,
of course, to having these children, right? That are a huge blessing. And I think in a society where how many children are not aborted, you're also being a witness to life, right? Like this is our family. When we go to church, everybody sees our family, and it's very obvious. My children look very different from my husband and I, my adopted children. So it's very clear that they are adopted. So I think that's a witness to other people,
Yeah. And I think also the blessing for our families and for our children is that we have many friends who have adopted children. So our children are seeing that this is a normal part of of building a family, I should say. It's just as normal as biological children. And I mean, we can't count, I think, how many people we know who have adopted children, and it's a blessing because they see that, they see that in the kids they hang out with.
And I think people also say, oh, the children will have some stigma. Like I remember recently this summer, I was at a pool, we were on vacation, and I was not in the pool. I was like watching my daughter, who's the adopted daughter, in the pool, and she had made a friend, and she was talking to the friend. And she's like, oh, no, that's my mom. And the girl couldn't understand that I was her mother, right? Because I don't look like my daughter. And my daughter just very matter of fact responds, oh, yeah, I'm adopted. Like, it just keeps swimming. Like, it's just as if it was like she was telling her the sky was blue. Like, it didn't matter to her. And the girl was like, oh, okay, like, it's totally fine. Like people think that there's a lot more stigma, I think, than there is in the reality. Like my children are not different. They're all I have 4 children. That's it.
Yeah. I like that because you're right. The stigma is like, oh my God, you're adopted, but it should be considered something beautiful, something positive. It's like, yeah, I mean, I have a family who their love goes beyond to the point that they absorbed or they adopted someone and gave them that love and that home. I think that's great. I think that removing that stigma is great because it shouldn't be like that. Adoption is a normal part, and it's a beautiful thing, giving another child a home, right?
Definitely. It's been a blessing.
All right. This has been great. I know that we're running out of time, and I just want to say that thank you so much, ladies, for jumping on board and telling us about your book called The Infertility Companion for Catholics: Spiritual and Practical Support for Couples. So any final thoughts?
Well, we want to just remind people that there's hope, and the Catholic Church, in her love for everyone, has wonderful options, and we just want people to be informed and know about that, and also just not feel alone. It's a hard time when you're struggling with infertility, but there's a lot of hope and love out there.
Yeah, I think that exactly what Carmen just said. I think to know that the church is supporting you, that Christ is with you, and to know that other Catholic couples may be suffering through the same thing, but can find hope in the teachings of the church.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Ladies, thank you so much for jumping on the show and telling us about your book and then this great mission you guys have been spreading the word about. I mean, I definitely learned a lot, and I will definitely share. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the whole point of the podcast, to share. Ha!
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
But I think it's also more successful because, like I mentioned, it's like about the individual couple, right? So if you're finding out what's really wrong with them, then you can probably try to help them with that. And you can't always, right? But to a larger extent, you might be able to help them versus you're just bypassing what's really wrong and you're just trying to create the baby, and, you know, and you're really never getting to the, you know, what's really going on with the couple. And they also have a much greater likelihood of achieving like another pregnancy, right? So let's say it's like you're infertile, you're starting to try to have a family. With NAPRO, since they've actually tried to solve what's really going on, your ability to have another child is much higher than with in vitro, where you probably just have to go back, right, and do another cycle of.
Well, and then also the factor of that baby sadly might be miscarried, right? The one that's created with in vitro, because if you're not even looking at why the woman isn't able to carry a baby to term or isn't able to conceive, then if you're not looking at the reasons, there could be something biological that makes it so that, who knows, they may have conceived and then just not carried a baby to term. They're not looking at the underlying reason. So here they are bypassing everything that God created and implanting the baby that sadly may or may not make it because they're not actually solving the underlying issues. So that leads to more heartbreak and more, you know, on so many levels, right, for this couple that's already struggling.
Okay. Interesting. I'm still thinking about the 30% for in vitro compared to the, what is it called? NAPRO, we're calling it?
NAPRO.
Yeah.
NAPRO, which is 60 to 70%.
And they're not talking about that. Nobody.
No,
Right.
they're not talking about it. I mean, is you at the beginning, Carmen, I think you mentioned something about the primary or secondary,
Right.
a little bit of what you were talking about now.
Mhm.
Is it common? I have heard stories of people having difficulty getting their first kid when they get married, but then they get that first kid and then the other one's pop, 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 pop.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So can you tell me a little bit about primary and secondary a little bit more? Is it common? Is it okay? Is it, or
They're all okay, but I don't know that we have statistics necessarily on one versus the other. I mean, we've experienced both. Like she had primary and I had secondary. So, I mean, it really doesn't, you just never know.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Well, you don't.
Yeah.
But at least it's good to know what to do. Like there is solutions and support for families who are struggling to have babies, that the solution is not to run to these artificial options like insemination and our in vitro, and there are more natural, God-given ways to do this, right? That at the end have a much better outcome, like a lot of things.
Exactly. We have to listen to the wisdom of the church.
Yeah, right. It's, I mean,